Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing with our 2022 season preview. As we take a look at the University of Illinois, I am absolutely thrilled to get into the Big Ten football previews. Illinois is one of my sleeper teams. They were my sleeper team last year. I think they're still going to be my sleeper team this year. I feel like they're just super undervalued. They kind of have this national narrative of being the doormat of the Big Ten. I think they have a lot of good players and a lot of reason to be optimistic about this team. Before we start getting into it, I just wanted to thank you guys for all the support you guys have shown the channel. I believe over 980 subscribers on the channel. All the comments, I love learning more about you guys' teams, chopping it up about football in the comment section. And so if you guys do like the content, you do like talking Big Ten football, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's start talking some Illinois football. Brett Bilma coming in after his first year. They go 5-7. I mean, competing with a lot of big teams. Obviously, some really big wins against Penn State and really looked really good down the stretch. Had a really good run game. But what I want to start with on this offensive side of the ball is the quarterback spot. Obviously, the transfer, Tommy Devito, former four-star guy from Syracuse coming in. He's played a lot of football at Syracuse. A lot of people had high expectations for him at Syracuse. They just couldn't really surround him with the offensive line and the playmakers on the outside for him to really succeed. So he's coming into Illinois, and I think he's going to bring a little bit more of a juice to this offense. I mean, looking at the explosive metrics, bottom 115 in offensive explosiveness, it's just not going to cut it. If you want to have a good offense, you got to throw in those chunk plays. You look at some of the best offenses in the country, they're the most explosive offenses in the country. So a lot easier to go 4 plays, 75 yards and score a touchdown than it is to go 10, 12 plays, 75 yards and score a touchdown. When you're throwing in those 30, 40-yard chunk plays, it's going to make life a lot easier to put points up on the board. I think Tommy DeVito, he has better arm talent than Brandon Peters. Obviously, a guy that I like at Michigan. You guys know, many of you guys who are friends of the channel know that I'm a big Michigan fan. Brandon Peters was a guy that just really couldn't crack it at Michigan. Comes to Illinois, average would be at best. That's probably putting it nicely. I think Tommy DeVito can bring a little bit more juice to this offense. But where I really want to talk about is these running backs. And last year, watching Illinois on offense, I wanted to pull my hair out sometimes. I mean, going back, starting the season at Nebraska, you have one of the best running backs in the Big Ten in Chase Brown, and I think he got 7 carries, maybe 5 carries that first game against Nebraska. I know they won the game, but that was kind of the narrative the whole season was they have some serious playmakers on the side of the ball. Isaiah Williams at wide receiver, Chase Brown, Josh Mcrae, and it just didn't seem like they were making it a point to get those guys the ball in their hands. And that's like the easiest recipe and probably the biggest deal for an offense coordinator to do is you have studs, figure out a way to get them the ball where they can cook. And I just feel like they weren't doing that. They bring in Barry Looney from UTSA. I'm optimistic that they're going to be able to do that a little bit more. But looking at that running back spot a little bit more, Chase Brown's obviously a stud. 1,000 yards, average 5.9 yards per carry. He's good out of the backfield too. He's a guy on my draft boards. He was a guy on my draft boards last year, certainly on my draft board this year in the 2023 NFL running back class. And then they got a young guy, Josh Mcrae, who's an absolute bowling ball. 6 feet, 240 pounds, and wants all of the smoke. And I feel like they balance each other out so well. Chase Brown is a little bit more of the all-purpose back who is good outside the tackle box. He's good at the next level. And then Josh Mcrae, he's a little bit smaller, though. And then you got Josh Mcrae, he's just 240 pounds. He wants to bang it inside the tackle box, kind of just run people over. And as a true freshman last year, to look how he looked, you just got to be optimistic about what he's going to look like in his second year of college football, getting a full year of the strength and conditioning staff working on him. It's one of the best running back duos in the country, not even the Big Ten, in the country. Looking at the wide receiver room, this is where I really kind of had my problems with the Illinois offenses. They just did not get the ball to their playmakers. Isaiah Williams, a former top 150 recruit, as just an athlete. He played quarterback at Illinois his first couple seasons. Now he's switching over to wide receiver. He's an absolute joystick. They give him the ball in space, and he will cook for you. And I feel like they just did not give him as many touches as they needed. 47 catches? He needs 10 touches a game at the least. I mean, he should have 120 touches when the season's over if he stays healthy. And if in my opinion, how the offense should be run. Now, obviously, kind of an armchair quarterback there. I have no experience calling offensive plays for a college football team. I do on Madden, but not in real life. But it just seems so obvious to get this guy the ball. And then you got a guy like Casey Washington who is solid. A guy that he transferred to Wake Forest for a little bit, came back to Illinois, and he looked solid. And then a guy I just want to highlight, Brian Hightower, a former top 150 recruit, believe he was at Miami. He looked good during the COVID year and then just didn't play at all in 2021. I think he had 0 catches, which is, was he hurt? I know he played a little, but he didn't have any touches. So he's a guy that maybe he can be a breakout. And then Luke Ford at the tight end spot. He was obviously a former Georgia guy, really heralded recruit, comes to Illinois. Ryan Looney was the former tight end coach at Arkansas when they were pumping out some really good tight ends like Hunter Henry. Maybe Luke Ford can kind of get a little juice from Looney and develop a little bit under Barry Looney's offense. On the offensive line, it's a good unit. They're losing a few guys that are hurt to lose, but they're bringing back guys that you got to feel good about. I mean, Julian Pearl's been a great tackle. Alex Pajleski, I think that's how you say, he's going to be a 6-year guy. I like his game a lot. And then they go to the transfer portal and get 2 massive. These guys are just mountains at the just bodies. And Isaiah Adams, who's 6'6", 320, and then Zy Chrysler, who's 6'7", 350 pounds. If you want to run the ball, especially like a Josh Mcrae running behind those 2 guys, that's exciting. And it just adds depth to the unit where they lost, 3 starters last year. So being able to get some reliable offensive linemen to just add depth and add some starters in the transfer portal, you got to like that. And if this offense can just take some steps forward, I mean, they were just kind of miserably bad at points last year. If they can take some steps forward, I can certainly see this team being a bull team because they have the playmakers to do it. On the defensive side of the ball, they put up, 29th in scoring defense in points per game. They were very good. And we're going to pull up this depth chart and look at some guys. They lose some guys, but they also bring some guys back who you got to be excited about. It's very hard to have as good of a defense as they did last year when your offense just can't stay on the field. I mean, so many 3-and-outs. The opposing offenses are on the field so much, but this defense really held its own. Looking at the defensive line first, like who's going to step up? You lose a guy like Owen Carney, who at that outside linebacker spot could have some juice on the outside. Who's going to step up and get some pressure on the quarterback? Guy like Jazan Newton, Keith Randolph, Rashawn Wilkins from the transfer portal at Vanderbilt. They have a few guys who you're excited about, but you kind of unproven. And so that's probably the biggest storyline on the defensive side of the ball is, can they get pressures with their defensive line? I mean, that is the most important metric, in my opinion, when you're evaluating college football defenses. Do they have dogs up front who can get pressures, negative plays, sacks, tackles for a loss, get off the field? That's so important. You look at like the Georgia defense last year. That is the recipe. And if Illinois can find some guys to really step up on the defense side of the ball, you got to be pretty optimistic that this defense is going to pretty much stay the same and be pretty good Big Ten defense. The linebacker spot, you got a guy, Calvin Hart. I believe he goes by CJ. I'm watching that opening Saturday game against Nebraska. He was tearing it up. It like absolutely looked awesome. And then he goes out with a brutal, I believe it was a knee injury. Misses the rest of the season. He's going to be back. And if he can have that form for 12 games, got to like how your linebacker spot is, because on the other side of him, Tariq Barnes, their second leading tackler, he's just a really solid Big Ten linebacker. And that's a really, really good unit of inside linebackers for Illinois. And then the back end. I mean, we watched the spring game. We previewed the spring game. Starts with Sidney Brown. He's a guy that is so unique for a defense and so special to have. As a guy who, and he's a safety, but he walks up and plays linebacker. He blitzes off the edge. He does everything. He's like a utility knife. And he is built. He's obviously the twin brother of Chase Brown, the running back. The Brown brothers are probably the 2 best players Illinois has. And I want to see Sidney Brown, kind of what they were doing last year with him. Let him cook a little bit. Let him line up in different spots. Let him impact the game. Let him play behind the line of scrimmage. That's kind of the key. And a guy like Devin Witherspoon, who was an all Big Ten honorable mention last year, when you watch him, I was watching him in the spring game. I mean, he has all the tools. He's really long. He has all the tools to be like a first-team all Big Ten cornerback. In a potential 2023 NFL draft pick, I threw him up on my board. If you wanted to build a cornerback in the lab, it'd be him. Long arms, smooth hips. Excuse me. There's a lot to like about Devin Witherspoon's game. The story is, can you replace? You have a few other unproven guys at the cornerback spot. Can they kind of throw those guys together to make it a good unit? But that defensive side of the ball, I feel like they're really going to take some steps forward. And now we don't get too much into to sports betting on the show. We have shows on it, but DraftKings has Illinois' win total at 4.5, which seems awfully low to me considering they seemed like they weren't playing their best football last year and had 5 wins. And so let's take a look at their schedule because I think it looks really good. And I think they certainly can make a bowl game and certainly go over that 4.5 win total. They start at Wyoming, 10-point favorites in that game. That's probably one of my first picks. It's the opening weekend on the 27th. If this offense can take the steps that you think they can, I think they should easily win by 10 points. But from just a season outlook, opening up with a home game against a non-Power 5 opponent in Wyoming, who's solid, they'll give you good work. But you're really going to be able to let Tommy DeVito and that offense kind of settle in and do what they want to do. Then you go Indiana. Indiana, I am not very high on. They were not good last year. If Illinois is as good as I think they can be, they should beat Indiana, and then they should beat a Virginia team that is losing just so much. They obviously get Brennan Armstrong back and some of those receivers back, but replacing all 5 offensive linemen, their defense is dreadful. I would think Illinois can just run the ball on them, keep Brennan Armstrong off the field, probably picking them to win that game at home as well, and then Chattanooga before you get into Big Ten play. This is where it gets dicey, but I think it's certainly reasonable to expect a 4-0 start for Illinois. And then you're going on the road to Wisconsin. I'm not picking Illinois to win that game. Wisconsin's defense is smothering. They'll have a good run game. Do I think they can win? Sure. I mean, Wisconsin's offense was just as brutal at points as Illinois' offense. And then Iowa and Minnesota. The big storyline is the Big Ten West is wide open. There's not a team that I think Illinois can't beat. There's no Michigan, Ohio State in the Big Ten West. So Iowa, Minnesota, both at home. If you can win just one of these 3 games, get to 5 wins kind of down the stretch, you got Nebraska, Michigan State, Purdue, Michigan, and then Northwestern. On the road at Michigan will be tough. Michigan State will be tough, although I'm not as high on Michigan State. And then Purdue at home. You're playing a lot of your big games at home. Minnesota, Iowa, Michigan State, Purdue, all at home. Then you go on the road at Michigan and then on the road at Northwestern to finish it out. And very well could be a 5-6, 6-5 season or record going into Northwestern. That'll be very exciting if that's kind of the bowl game is on the line going to Northwestern. Although I think they can certainly be 6 wins by that game too. And so the story of this team is, can that offense take some steps? That defense is good. I really like the defense. But can the offense just be a little bit more explosive? I'm not saying they need to be a top 25 offense, but can you be in the top 75? Can you be in the top 50? They have the players to do it when you have a guy like Chase Brown, Isaiah Williams on the outside, Josh Mccrae. Like, there are some really good pieces around this offense that can find some explosive plays. Can the new OC Looney let those guys cook? That's probably my biggest question mark coming into that season. I love me some Illinois football. Chase Brown, I follow him on Instagram. He's absolutely awesome. I also like his brother, Sidney Brown. A lot of guys that really excite me for this Illinois football team. Once again, I appreciate you guys for checking out the video. If you do like the content, you do like talking, especially Big Ten football, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.